Powertrust was one of the grantees for Cycle 1 who we were supported with the feasibility study grant. They're working on a solution to support distributed renewable energy developers across South Asia and Southeast Asia, and provide them upfront capital for and facilitating them to purchase distributed renewable energy certificates in the region. So it's a very interesting model and solution, and yeah, hopefully we can get Joseph to come on and share a bit more about that and his experiences, which I'm sure will be very helpful for a lot of the potential applicants.
Powertrust, we are really a managed marketplace, and what we do is we enable multinationals who have stated net zero emission targets to procure energy attribute certificates from renewable energy developers across the global south. And the way we do it is really initially through bilateral agreements. So you might wonder why this objective. Well, if you think about it, these multinationals have this stated renewable energy targets in terms of emissions, and they want to be able to deploy capital to do that. At the same time, we also do have these developers, normally distributed developers across the global south, who would like to have some capital, which would be a nice slice of their capital structure. But at the same time, they are not able to do that. And they also do have very small capacities. So we're talking about solar lanterns to the 3 or 4 megawatts. So one way to do that is to be able to aggregate all these projects and present them in a way where they can be financed. And so that is really what Powertrust really does. At its core is to be able to bring these multinational organizations together to be able to acquire these projects with respect to their specific energy attributes and be able to get these transactions done. So we really act in this place of creating this marketplace. What is interesting, next slide, is that this cannot be easily achieved with the current model that we have. And there are a couple of reasons why this cannot be the case. The first is that the developers actually want capital upfront. And because they want capital upfront, it's not possible to wait until projects are developed in order for them to have that capital. The multinationals, on the other hand, want to pay on when the RECs or energy attributes are delivered. So you have a conundrum where you have one entity wanting to have the capital deployed after the RECs or renewable energy credits are received, and the other one wanting capital in order to be able to develop the projects. So what we have put together is a blended finance prepayment model that allows this action to happen, where developers are going to be getting their capital upfront, be able to develop their projects, and the off-takers, in this case, the multinationals, would be able to get renewable energy credits that can show that there is additionality that has already been achieved. In addition, the developers are going to have a revenue stream that is denominated in US dollars, and they have cash flows that are certain, and they can have this capital upfront. This allows them to de-risk their projects and also be able to bring other investors on board. So when we think about what this blended finance prepayment model can do, we can walk through some of the attributes. You can, as the multinational, they can pay upfront for multiple years of RECs. The mechanism allows upfront payments to these developers so they can have capital upfront. You can also that also creates a new tranche in their capital structure, so they can talk about their debt and equity and this new tranche that is coming in. And developers, most of it will be paid in US dollars. So the question is, why the blended finance? Well, the idea of blended finance, as most of you are reading about it and thinking through it, blended finance really allows us to reduce the cost of capital, because you're thinking about capital coming from different tranches. So you're thinking about your foundations, your folks who want concessionary capital, who have concessionary capital, and they have the return-seeking capital. So that really allows us to really bring down the cost of capital. Also, some of these projects are going to be riskier than usual, so you want to be able to attack these riskier projects, but you want to do it in a way such that your weighted cost of capital is done, and this project can easily be financed. And that you can think about first loss positions and guarantee positions. But this also enables corporate participation. As you probably know, one of the biggest development that we've seen in the past is that a lot of these corporates are now really focused on their emission targets, and they're deploying capital. And this has happened in the US, in Europe, and other places where the corporates have been very active. Being able to allow these corporates to take part in this type of projects in the global south is actually very important. And then the last thing is, as the DFIs, they see the ability to mobilize capital, they are more incentivized to also invest in these projects. So in terms of the stakeholder, what are the stakeholder impacts? So the developer gets more capital up front. The investor, obviously, they have a return on their investment. And obviously, the corporate will get a return on investment as well as their renewable energy credits. So the idea really for us was, how do you come up with a way to mobilize funds to be able to solve two key questions: provide capital upfront, aggregate this project to scale, and be able to finance them. So these are some of the things that we had to go through, and then to go through the process of really working with Convergence to be able to get a grant to do that.
You spoke about the concept and what you'd like to achieve, but if you can share a bit more on how would design funding help you achieve some of those elements for designing this concept, and typically around the feasibility study stage, what are some of the elements that you look to achieve as part of the feasibility study stage? I think that'll be great if you can shed some light on that.
So when you really think about it, there is a lot of work to put together a facility or a financial vehicle. And often those who are coming from the development side, or maybe from the position of having worked on these projects before, they actually have deep domain expertise in that area. So in our case, we had deep domain expertise in putting together bilateral contracts that we have the multinationals on one side, with us on the other side, and also having contracts with the developers as well. What becomes pretty quickly is, when you're trying to put together a financial vehicle, there is a different set of work that needs to be done to prove that the concept is viable, is sustainable, can be financed and bankable, and that investors will get their return. And the whole process of getting that done requires detailed explanation and analysis and testing and putting together the structures. So one of the key things and the benefits of having a facility like this and the support from Convergence is that we're able to pay for the work that we have to do in terms of designing the vehicle before asking investors to put money in it. So some of the things that we're doing with respect to having this ability is to be able to pay for our legal fees, to be able to design the structure, to be able to travel, to go to conferences, really everything that has to do with putting the structure in place, testing it, and making sure that it's bankable and can be leveraged and achieve the goals that has to be achieved.
Maybe we can talk about the application process and how it all started. A lot of prospective applicants in the audience there would love to know more about your experience. You've been through the process, and you successfully awarded grants. Based on your experience of the overall design funding process, what do you think was sort of some of the critical elements that other prospective applicants in the audience should be focusing on when they're applying to this window?
Well, I think there are quite a few things that we need to really look at. And I think when I say quite a few things, it's really, the first I would say is understand that the application process is quite rigorous. and it's quite detailed. So when we start talking about the concept note that we start with, this concept note has to be succinct and to be able to carry across the message that you want to convey, such that the team can understand what you are trying to put together. So that's the first one. The second one is you have to devote resources to actually get the application done and to make sure at each step of the process, if you are called upon to answer questions, even during the due diligence, that you have the resource to do that. The third part is, I believe, the breadth and depth of your team. I think one of the things that we benefited from is that we had a very deep bench. We had breadth, we had depth, and we had experience on the ground. And so that really helped us to really articulate what we are trying to achieve. I also think that the questions that you are asked, there's a reason why they're asked, and you cannot just blow them off. So you have to actually take time to answer the questions in a very thorough manner. And I think the last part I'll add to this is really the passion. If you're really passionate about doing something new, you're always going to hear naysayers say that this is not going to happen, this is not possible, and that comes through in your application. So when there's doubt and there's confusion, the person who is evaluating is going to understand. I think one of the things that we were able to bring to the table is to have folks who actually believed in what we're trying to do and had passion that they would be able to achieve that despite the naysayers. And we had deep breadth, deep domain expertise, and we actually got it over the end. So I would say all these factors are critical when thinking about applying for the grant.
Great, thanks, Joseph. You covered on some really interesting points there, which talks about the overall process and the mindset that you need to have across the process, which I think is really valuable. Were there any particular aspects of the proposal that you think helped make your proposal stand out or your concept stand out? We obviously get a lot of proposals, and there are many different actors trying to come up with solutions in similar target sectors or geographies. Do you feel like there are some elements within the proposal that makes them stand out around some aspects that prospective applicants should be a little more mindful of or to emphasize in the concept notes and proposals?
Yes, definitely. I think there are quite a few things. That's what I would say. The first is I would say understanding what exactly you are trying to address. So for us, the questions that were asked is, okay, we want to get into mitigation. We want to know that this is really a new vehicle and it's not been done out there. We want to understand how the structure is. We want to understand whether if we were to put, one or two together and ask people to invest in, would they actually invest? So I think oftentimes one of the challenges is that most people think about, I can put together a facility, a vehicle or whatever, but they think it's just an extension of the work that they are doing, and haven't thought about the fact that even though you might have deep domain expertise in one area, this is a whole new thing, and you have to really understand the process. So what I'll say here is that we've worked really hard on our project. We thought we were at the proof of concept stage, and this is funny because I just wanted to add as one of the things that you learn from the process. And as we were going through the back and forth of the questioning, we realized that we are really a little bit more than feasibility, but not at proof of concept yet. And the back and forth with convergence was really key for us. And so you really have to understand where you are in your process, because sometimes you might think you are done until you start answering questions and realize, oh no, you are not there yet. So I would say be mindful of where you are in your trajectory of moving from feasibility all the way to full funding.